Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar for Rooftop Monitors. My name is Rob Mulligan, and I'm the Shorebird Data Quality Manager for the Shorebird Program at the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. First off, thank you to each surveyor here for your continued interest in monitoring shorebirds and seabirds. Florida's extensive shorebird monitoring program is only possible because of the dedication of people like you. Your monitoring efforts help us locate rooftops with nests and chicks so we can protect them, identify threats so that we can manage them, and detect trends in populations so that we can better track focal species. Once again, on behalf of all shorebirds and seabirds that nest in Florida, thank you for your participation. We have two main goals to cover today. Review how to monitor shorebirds and seabirds nesting on rooftops using our standardized protocol, the Breeding Bird Protocol for Florida's seabirds and shorebirds, which I'll refer to as the protocol during this presentation, and review how to enter this monitoring data into the Florida Shorebird Database, which I'll refer to as the FSD or the database. The FSD is our online database where you will be entering the data that you collect. It is the repository that tracks nesting shorebird and seabird data in Florida. The Breeding Bird Protocol provides standardized methods for data collection. When data is collected the same way across the whole state, we can track population status and trends, and we can use the data to inform management decisions locally and statewide. The protocol provides instruction on how to monitor shorebird and seabird breeding populations. These are counts of adult breeding birds, nesting, chick rearing, and staging locations, nesting outcomes, so whether or not nesting was successful, and any threats or disturbances that may be present. This could be predation, anthropogenic causes, or anything else that threatens successful nesting. The link to the protocol was emailed to you prior to this webinar, and it can also be found on the FSD website under the Resources tab. Feel free to have a copy open as we continue. Even though many of you are familiar with the Breeding Bird Protocol, we recommend reviewing the protocol each year in preparation for the upcoming breeding season. This helps to keep the information fresh in your mind and keep you up to date with any new changes. For 2026, there were no revisions to the protocol, but we would like to remind observers that last year we added additional guidance on page 18 for select rooftops. In some partnerships, observers express concern with time constraints and volunteer retention associated with monitoring long-time inactive rooftops. So we added some additional guidance for monitoring these long-time inactive rooftops. If a rooftop is still suitable for nesting, i.e. it is still tar and gravel, but no nesting has been documented in more than 3 years, please survey this location at least twice between May and June, when nesting is most likely to occur. Surveying these locations at least twice during this time will give us enough information to track activity and give partners and volunteers additional time to focus their monitoring efforts on other rooftops. Shorebird breeding season typically starts in March and goes through the end of August. Depending on the species, the weather, and where you survey in the state, you may see birds nesting as early as February or tending to unfledged young as late as October. The Breeding Bird Protocol designates 6 count windows, which are week-long survey windows from March to August. The dates for these count windows are the same each year and apply to both route and rooftop-based surveys. Our first count window of the 2025 season is just around the corner. At a minimum, we ask Florida Shorebird Alliance partners to commit to surveying during each count window. Surveying during these monthly count windows provide us with a statewide snapshot of breeding activity. We recommend surveying weekly once rooftops you survey have nesting activity. Weekly surveys provide a better estimate of peak counts and increases our understanding of nest outcomes and causes of nest failure. Page 2 of the Breeding Bird Protocol lists the seabird and shorebird species that breed in Florida. And out of these 20 species, only 6 species use rooftops to nest. These 6 species are pictured here on the slide. Starting upper left and going to the right, they are the killdeer, gull-billed tern, roseate tern, black skimmer, least tern, and American oystercatcher. Typically, these birds would nest on beaches and lay eggs in the sand, but as available beach nesting habitat has decreased across the state, some species shifted to using rooftops. Rooftop nesting shorebirds and seabirds select flat gravel rooftops to nest on and will dig a nest scrape, laying eggs in the gravel roof substrate just as they would on the beach sand. Most rooftop nesting is coastal, but there are also some inland rooftop colonies. These inland sites are near bodies of water, so the birds still have access to plenty of fish to feed their young. Least terns are by far the most common rooftop nesting species. Black skimmers and oystercatchers will occasionally nest on rooftops, but seeing any other species nesting on rooftops will depend on where you survey in the state. So, please familiarize yourself with the birds that nest in your area. And if you are new to rooftop monitoring, it is helpful to shadow a more seasoned monitor before surveying on your own. There are a handful of key concepts you'll need to understand before you start monitoring. For anyone who has their protocol in front of them, the information I'm about to cover is on page 4. As monitoring partners, you need to know the difference between sites and site visits. A site is the physical location, in this case a rooftop, where the birds are nesting. In the database, rooftop sites are represented by a pink diamond. A site visit is the trip you take to the site to count the birds and record what you see. We are monitoring rooftops where seabirds and shorebirds have historically nested. This means buildings that still have flat gravel rooftops and have had documented nesting in previous seasons. We recommend you spend at least 15 minutes observing a rooftop during each site visit. At rooftops where you see birds, you will record adult, chick, and nest counts, and eventually the overall outcome of the rooftop colony. We will go over how to collect this data shortly. You can log into the FSD and click Add an existing rooftop to see the rooftop sites in your area. We will go over how to navigate the database later. If you see a rooftop near you that you would like to monitor, contact your local Florida Shorebird Alliance coordinator to see if anyone else has signed up to monitor that rooftop. Your partnership coordinator will be able to tell you which rooftops are already being monitored and which could benefit from additional coverage. Sometimes you will discover that a gravel rooftop you have been monitoring has been re-roofed or the building has been demolished. When a rooftop becomes unsuitable, the site no longer needs to be monitored and can be retired. This means it is removed from monitoring and data entry. You can find those instructions on page 18 of the protocol. Report unsuitable rooftops by email to flshorebirddatabase@myfwc.com and to your local partnership coordinator. Include the following information: the name of the rooftop as it appears in the database, the location, why it is no longer suitable, and when it became unsuitable. Only rooftops that cannot support nesting are eligible for retirement. Be sure to keep an eye out for new rooftops, especially near areas where rooftops that previously hosted nesting birds have become unsuitable. The birds may be looking for a new place to nest. If you find a new rooftop site, notify the property owner right away, even before leaving the site. You can find the resources for doing this on the Florida Shorebird Alliance website. Additionally, fill out a rooftop site details form, including the address or GPS coordinates. Then add it to the FSD and contact your local partnership coordinator. Please do not take it upon yourselves to go on any rooftop to monitor colonies or to confirm if a rooftop is suitable. This is very important. We want you and the birds to be safe, and climbing rooftops is not safe for you or for the birds or the property owners. Document what you see from a safe location, and typically this will be from the ground or from a nearby building. To aid in data collection, we provide 2 data sheets which we're going to go over today. They can both be found on the FSD's website under the Resources tab. This is an example of a rooftop site details form. This is the form you will use to document any new rooftops. It asks basic information such as the rooftop's address, whether you notified the landowner, building contact information, and the type of building. There is also room to report optional information such as if a chick checking program is in place for the rooftop, if the building has a parapet, and if the roof drains and gutters have been protected. Many partnerships have resources to install rooftop protections and help keep chicks safe, so it is important to let your partnership coordinator know about any new rooftops as soon as possible. We will go over what some of those protections are next. Florida Shorebird Alliance partners work to protect rooftop nesting shorebirds and seabirds by reaching out to property owners to notify the property owner that they have these unique birds nesting on the roofs, to provide education about the birds, to connect them with local FWC contacts, and to advise them to conduct preventative maintenance for air conditioners and rooftops prior to the start of the breeding season in order to minimize overlapping with active nesting. The Florida Shorebird Alliance website has flyers, signs, and other outreach materials for rooftop nesting sites under the Resources tab. We also protect rooftop nesting birds by fencing roofs that do not have a raised edge or a parapet, as shown in the picture on the bottom right. Chick fencing helps keep birds from falling off the roof. Partners identify roofs that need fencing and work with local FWC staff to fence these roofs each year. Chicks can fall down storm drains, so screens are also installed on any drains to prevent chicks from falling. Another way we protect rooftop nesting birds is to return fallen chicks to rooftops. Chick checkers go out several times a day to look for any fallen chicks and return them to the roof when possible. If chicks have been injured by the fall, they are taken to rehabilitators. Chick checkers are extremely important at sites where rooftops cannot be modified with chick fencing and/or drain covers. If you need to contact FWC staff, regional and statewide contacts can be found on the FSD website under the Help tab. There are 4 basic steps to rooftop monitoring. 1. Visit the rooftop during each count window or weekly when birds are present. 2. If you survey from the ground, which is how most sites are surveyed, stay and watch the roof for at least 15 minutes. 3. Fill out a rooftop site visit form each time you check on a rooftop, even when no birds are seen. Those zeros are important data too. And finally, 4. Enter this information into the FSD. Every time you monitor a rooftop, you will complete a rooftop visit form, even if you do not see any birds. When filling out a rooftop visit form, you will need to record the following: the rooftop name, the names of the observers that participated in monitoring, the date, the start time and duration of your survey. The duration should be at least 15 minutes. The vantage point, the rooftop status and final outcome if the rooftop no longer has birds, whether or not there was a major loss, the species and count of any adults, chicks, or nests, and any comments. There is also an optional information section where you can record any disturbances if you noticed any chicks, or if you noticed any chicks that may have fallen from the rooftop. Let's go over the top portion of the rooftop visit form first. Observers are defined as those individuals who actively helped conduct rooftop surveys and helped collect data. Anyone tagging along on a rooftop survey that is not collecting data does not need to be documented as an observer. Florida is in 2 different time zones, and time should always be reported as the local time. The survey duration should be at a minimum of 15 minutes. Next, report your vantage point. Your vantage point is the perspective from which you surveyed the rooftop. Your options for recording vantage point are on the ground, above or across, and in rare cases, on the rooftop. Most sites are surveyed from the ground. Whenever you can, take advantage of the perspectives that would give you an above-across vantage point, such as a taller building adjacent to the one you're surveying, or from a hill or slope that gives you a better view of the rooftop colony. Elevated vantage points usually provide a better view, and thus you could get better counts. You will also report the site status for the rooftop, and you have 3 options for recording this: no nesting yet this year, active, and no longer active. No nesting yet this year indicates that as far as you know, no nesting has happened yet this breeding season. This may be true all season long if the rooftop never becomes active. It may be August and birds never showed up, but it is still recorded so we know if the roof was used for nesting. Active means that you did see shorebirds or seabirds, present on the roof, flying to or from, hovering over the roof, or you heard them. On the ground, you will likely not be able to see all the birds, but you'll usually be able to hear the birds or see them flying to and from the rooftop. No longer active is used when a rooftop was active on a previous site visit, but during the current site visit, you did not see or hear any birds. If you report the site status as no longer active, you will also need to report a final outcome. This indicates whether the rooftop site was successful. If you observed at least one flight-capable chick at the rooftop, you would check the first box, one or more flight-capable young produced at the site. Or if you're confident that no flight-capable young were produced, you check the second box. Or if you're unsure, you would check I don't know. Remember, a rooftop can go from having a final outcome to active again, but once it's active, a rooftop cannot go back to no nesting yet this year. On every site visit, we also ask that you report whether the rooftop experienced a major loss. This is when the colony loses 25% or more of its chicks or nests. Check either yes, no, or I don't know. If you choose yes, please fill in the cause if it's known. If you're surveying from the ground, you may not be able to determine if there was a major loss. Finally, we ask you to report counts of adults, nests, and chicks for any species that is using the rooftop to nest. We'll go into more detail on how to conduct counts shortly. Here's an example for a rooftop visit form where no nesting has occurred yet this season. The observers surveyed this historical rooftop for 15 minutes on the first day of the March count window. They did not see or hear any birds. They recorded their names, the date, the rooftop name, the start time using local time, and the survey duration, as well as marking their vantage point as on the ground, and the status as no nesting yet this year. Major loss and counts are not filled out because no birds have been present at this roof yet. During the April count window, the same rooftop was surveyed. The observers saw least terns flying to and from and hovering over the rooftop during a 15-minute count period. The vantage point was still on the ground, but the status is now active, and no was recorded for the major loss, since this is the first time this season that birds were observed on this rooftop. A week after the April survey, a tropical storm impacted the area. When the observers survey this rooftop after the tropical storm, they do not see or hear any birds during their 15-minute survey. The least terns seen earlier are no longer here. Their vantage point did not change, it is still on the ground. The rooftop status is now reported as no longer active, with the final outcome of no flight-capable young were produced, and that yes, there was a major loss due to a tropical storm. Since no birds were seen and the rooftop is no longer active, the count table does not need to be filled out. The observers return to survey the same rooftop a few weeks later and see that the least terns are back. So, they report the rooftop as active. A rooftop can become active again after having a final outcome. Had our observers not seen or heard any birds during this survey, they would have reported the rooftop as no longer active with a final outcome of no flight-capable chicks produced. When monitoring a rooftop colony, you will be counting any nests, chicks, and adults that you can see in the area. We also ask you to report the count type because it lets us know how you counted the birds. What you're able to count and what count types you use will depend on your vantage point. You may be wondering how you're meant to count nests without going onto the roof. You can count rooftop colonies the same way as you count beach nesting colonies. For beach nesting colonies, we ask observers to stay out of posted areas, which means they have to count from a distance and at an elevated vantage point. If your vantage point is on the ground, you won't be able to see any nests. Counting nests can only be done from on the roof or from an above across vantage point. If your vantage point allows, count nests by counting how many adults are in the incubating posture. One adult in incubating posture equals one nest. In this photo, there are 7 adults in the incubating posture, so we would report the nest count as 7. To report the adult count, count all adults present on the rooftop site, including adults in the incubating posture. In addition to the 7 incubating adults, there are 3 adults present on the rooftop that are not in incubating posture. This gives us a total adult count of 10 adults present on the rooftop. When reporting chick counts, it's important to be able to distinguish between the 3 chick age classes: downy, feathered, and flight capable. Chick age classes are also discussed on page 15 of the protocol. Downy chicks, pictured on the left, are chicks that are just hatched, up to 1.5 to 2 weeks old, depending on the species. They are covered in down and look very fuzzy. They're small and stay close to their parents. Feathered chicks, pictured in the middle, are about 2 to 4 weeks old and have some feathers that have grown in. They may have more feathers than down. They're bigger and more mobile, but noticeably smaller than an adult. Chicks that fall off the roof are often in this age class. Flight-capable young, pictured on the right, are typically 3 to 4 weeks old. They have learned to fly and can fly in short bursts. As soon as a chick is able to do this, they are counted as flight-capable. These chicks are now close in size to the adults. When counting birds, we ask you to report the count type you used. A count type is the method you use to count the nests, chicks, and adults. Knowing what count type you used lets us know how you counted the birds, which gives us a sense for the accuracy of those numbers. Count types are defined on pages 11 through 13 of the breeding bird protocol. The count type that you report to us will depend on your vantage point. Your vantage point will affect what you can see and what kind of count you can conduct. Let's go through these count types when you are surveying from either an above or across vantage point or an on a roof vantage point. From these vantage points, you can count using one of the following: a direct count, an extrapolated count, present or absent, or did not check. When surveying a rooftop from above or across, or on a roof vantage point, you'll most likely conduct a direct count. Use a direct count when you see everything on a rooftop. You can count all nests, chicks, and adults. And the number you're reporting to us is the true actual number. Conduct all counts twice and report the average for each count. Start with nests and count all nests at least twice and report the average of your counts as the direct count of nests. For larger colonies on rooftops, you may need to move around to see the entire colony. If you are counting a rooftop with other surveyors, each surveyor can count once and then report the average of everyone's counts as the direct count. Repeat for chicks and total adults. Do not try to conduct multiple counts at the same time. The definition for direct count can be found on page 11 of the Breeding Bird Protocol. The example in the protocol is for a ground colony, but the steps are the same for rooftop surveys. In this example, the entire colony is visible from your vantage point, so you're able to count the entire colony. On your first count, you counted 50 adults in incubating posture on the rooftop. On your second, 52. You will report the average of these two counts, 51 nests, as your direct count of nests for this rooftop colony. If you are unable to conduct a direct count because something prevents you from seeing the entire rooftop colony, you may use an extrapolated count. Extrapolated counts are less accurate than direct counts, but do provide good information for the size of the colony. Extrapolated counts are used when the rooftop colony is obstructed from view and there's no feasible way for you to see the entire colony or entire rooftop. An extrapolated count is not a guess. It is a calculation based on the proportion of the colony where you can conduct a direct count. The definition for extrapolated count can be found on page 12 of the Breeding Bird Protocol. Because of the use of extrapolated counts at rooftop sites is uncommon, the example in the protocol is of a ground colony, but the same process for conducting extrapolated counts still applies. Let's walk through the protocol's example colony as it applies to rooftops. The example colony pictured here has a large dune running through it. It is not feasible to conduct a direct count because no vantage point or combination of vantage points allow you to view and count the entire colony. For rooftops, the obstruction could be the shape of the rooftop, a wall splitting the colony, air conditioner units, or other structures present on the rooftop that significantly impede your ability to see the entire colony, no matter your vantage point. So instead of using a direct count, you conduct an extrapolated count using the calculation protocol found in the Breeding Bird Protocol on page 12. Step 1. Position yourself where you can see as much of the colony as possible from your vantage point. Step 2. You delineate the viewable portion of the colony as your count area. In this example, you can see the portion of the colony shaded in light green. You cannot see the portion of the colony shaded in dark green. That's blocked by a wall or a series of structures on the rooftop. You conduct a direct count of the nests in this viewable portion of the colony. Remember, a direct count is the average of two counts. In this example, your direct count of nests in the viewable portion is 450. You determine approximately what percent of the entire colony your direct count area covers. Here you approximate that you counted 75% of the entire colony. Now you divide your direct count by the proportion of the colony counted to get your extrapolated count. In this example, you divide 450 by 0.75 for a total of 600 nests. For decimal values, round to the nearest whole number. Again, this count type is rarely used to count rooftop colonies. You are most likely going to be using a direct count. If you don't have time for a direct or extrapolated count, you can report present or absent. These count types at least let us know whether a colony is active in the area. If you use present in lieu of a count, please note that present equals 1. So if you report present for nests, we are only able to say with any certainty that there was at least one nest. Marking absent indicates that you were able to verify that there were 0 nests or chicks in the colony. If you can't confirm presence or absence, for example, it's a hot day and you suspect chicks may be present but are hiding behind or under structures on the rooftop, report back "did not check." Some of the count types that you will use while your vantage point is on the ground are different. Because you are surveying from the ground, you won't be able to see everything that's happening on the rooftop. You will not be able to count nests, and counting chicks will be opportunistic. Let's go through the count types used when you are surveying from the ground vantage point. Use one of the following count types: a flush count, a high count, present, or did not check. You can find these count types on page 13 of the breeding bird protocol. A flush count is used to count adults. It is the maximum number of individual adult birds you saw from the ground during your survey. Despite its name, a flush count does not necessarily mean this is a count of birds raising off the roof in response to a disturbance. Rather, it is a count of birds flying to or from, hovering over the rooftop, and/or landing on the rooftop during your survey. For example, if I surveyed for 20 minutes and 5 minutes into the survey, I saw these 4 birds fly back to the rooftop, but none leave. And then 10 minutes later, I see another 2 birds land on the rooftop. I report a flush count of 6 adults. A flush count can be from a single observation point or multiple. Sometimes a building is too large to monitor from a single observation point, and you will need to utilize multiple observation points around the building to get a better idea for the parts of the roof where the birds are flying from. A high count is the equivalent of a flush count, but it is only used to count chicks. Counting chicks is done opportunistically, as you can only see chicks when they either venture to the edge of the roof or have fallen off the roof and are on the ground. Report the highest number of chicks that you were able to see from your vantage point. This includes both chicks on the roof and those that you find on the ground. You can also report chicks as present. Again, reporting present has limited utility as present equals 1. There was at least 1 chick at this rooftop. Finally, we have did not check. Use this when you cannot confirm if adults or chicks are present. Because surveying from the ground limits your view of the colony, reporting did not check for chicks and adults is common. You will notice that absent is not an option to report counts of chicks and adults from an on-ground vantage point. Since you cannot see the rooftop, you are not able to verify if there are in fact no adults or chicks. Okay, so we've seen this photo already, and I gave the answer away earlier, but let's walk through the process of filling out the rooftop visit form for this observation. This is from an above across vantage point. There are 7 adults in incubating posture, so 7 nests. There are 3 other adults that are not sitting on nests, so we have a direct count of 10 adults. If those 10 birds were the only birds present on this rooftop, I would fill out the rooftop visit form as follows. My vantage point is above across, the status is active, I don't know for major loss, direct count of 7 lease turn nests, and a direct count of 10 adults total. You are not able to confirm any chicks, so you report did not check. On the bottom of the rooftop visit form, there are fields for optional data. If you do see chicks falling off roofs, it's important to report this information to the regional FWC shorebird biologist. Any fallen chicks should also be included in the chick counts for the rooftop. In this example, 3 feathered chicks were found and returned to the rooftop. Gulls were documented to be causing birds to flush from the rooftop, and 1 banded lease tern was observed at the rooftop. If you see banded birds on your surveys, please report and document these observations. Remember to record the species of the bird, the color and position of any bands or flags, and if there are any codes on the bands or flags, an approximate GPS location, the date and time of the observation, and, if possible, get a photo. Visit the Florida Shorebird Alliance Banded Birds website to learn where to report banded birds. Who you report bands to varies by species and by band combinations. You can also find guidance on how to collect and record band information under the Resources tab. We do not currently have dedicated fields in the FSD to report banded birds, but you can include this information in the comments. After you've completed your rooftop surveys, you will need to enter your data into the Florida Shorebird database at flshorebirddatabase.org. The first step in entering data is to create your own FSD account if you don't already have one. Then log in. Anytime you're using the FSD, it's best to use Google Chrome as your browser. If you can't remember your login information, don't have Google Chrome, or have other issues with the database, you can email questions to flshorebirddatabase@myfwc.com. After you log in, you will be asked who you are entering data for. Click on the Set for Myself button. You will only use Select Another User button if you are entering data on behalf of someone else. A guide for entering data for others can be found by clicking on the Quick Guide link. After setting data entry for yourself, you will be brought to this page. This is your My Data page, where you will be able to see all of the routes, breeding sites, and rooftops that you monitor. The My Rooftops box is at the bottom of this page. If you are new to the FSD, the My Rooftops box will be empty. For returning surveyors, your rooftops from previous seasons will be preloaded on this page, unless you have removed them from your profile. The data forms we went over today are entered in the database when you enter a rooftop survey. In order to enter rooftop surveys, you will first need to add the rooftop you are surveying to your profile. Most rooftops are historical nesting sites that already exist in the database. If you need to add a rooftop to your profile, first check to see whether it already exists in the database. To do this, click on the blue Add Existing Rooftop button. Search for a rooftop either by FWC region or county. The rooftops will appear in a list and on the map. Select the rooftop or rooftops you want to add to your profile by checking the checkbox next to the rooftop name. Then click Add to My Sites. The selected rooftops will then appear on your profile on the My Breeding Data page. If you are absolutely certain that the rooftop you want to survey doesn't already exist, you can create a new rooftop in the database. After clicking the Create New Rooftop button in the My Rooftops box, you will be able to add a point on the map or enter GPS coordinates to create your new rooftop. Give your rooftop a name and provide descriptive details, where it is, where you stand relative to the building during a survey, etc. Now you're ready to enter your rooftop survey data. Click on the Add Visit button next to the rooftop you want to enter a survey for. This will bring you to the Report Site Visit page, which is equivalent to the rooftop visit form. Enter the data from your rooftop visit form here. You will notice that the Observer 1 field is automatically filled out for you. Observer 1 will have your name because when you logged into the database, you set data entry for yourself. Remember that people should only be considered observers if they actively helped with the survey. To add other observers who have FSD accounts, click on the button with the 3 dots next to Observer 2. In the pop-up box, enter the first or last name of the second observer. Hit Search User. Then hit Select next to the desired person's name. Their name is now displayed as an observer. Use the additional observers boxes to enter information about people who participated in the survey but do not have an FSD account. You can also use these fields if there are more than 3 people with FSD accounts who participated on the survey. In this example, Elizabeth Darcy helped Megan and Victoria survey this rooftop, but she does not have an FSD account. So I record her name in the names box and report 1 in the number of additional observers box. If no additional observers were present, then the number should remain 0. This page corresponds to the form, so it should be fairly straightforward how to enter the data. Remember to report start time as local time. If you want to view your rooftop surveys, see the surveys that other monitors have entered for that rooftop, or update any information about rooftop surveys you have already entered, You can do that by clicking the View Edit button in the My Rooftops box. This will bring you to the View My Rooftops site page. Information about the rooftop and any site visits that you or others have entered are displayed here. You can view other surveys, but you can only make edits to surveys that you were a part of. To edit a rooftop survey, click on the Edit button for the rooftop that you would like to edit. From the View My Rooftop site page, you can also update the rooftop management history, remove a rooftop from your FSD profile, or update the rooftop site details. To perform any of these actions, click on the View Edit Rooftop Management Details and/or Remove from My Data button. No longer monitor a rooftop and would like to remove it from your profile, use the Remove from My Data button. This will not delete the data or the rooftop. It will only remove it from your profile. So, to review, there are 4 main steps for entering data in the FSD. Sign into your account, check for existing rooftops, or if a rooftop doesn't exist, create a new rooftop. Add a rooftop visit, view or edit your rooftop visits. The Breeding Bird Protocol, data forms, quick guides, webinar recordings, and other helpful training videos are all available on the FSD website under the Resources tab. Keep in mind that the 2026 webinar recordings will not be available immediately, but you can find the 2025 webinar recordings until then. Also, check out the Florida Shorebird Alliance website for additional resources about bird identification, chick age guides, the monthly Rackline newsletter, and much more. And remember that you can contact us anytime with questions about the protocol or data entry at flshorebirddatabase@myfwc.com. Thank you all for attending this webinar and for continuing to make the Florida Shorebird Monitoring Program a success. Please email us anytime during the season with questions. We do have some time for questions, so feel free to type in the chat box or raise your hand virtually. Thank you all again for attending, and I hope everyone has a great season.